Welcome to the Just podcast with Tim Buxton, proudly recorded on Yugambeh country, the land of the Kombumerri saltwater people of the Gold Coast, Australia. Through courageous conversations with leaders and pioneers across diverse fields, we'll unpack the important, often complex topics that are shaping our world today and explore what it takes to create lasting, positive change in our communities. Each episode you'll be inspired by entrepreneurs, educators, artists, humanitarians, and unsung everyday heroes doing the extraordinary work it takes to build a just world. A world filled with hope, belonging, and boundless possibilities. So, without further ado, let's dive into another courageous conversation, inspiring change. Mario, welcome to the podcast. I am so glad to just be talking with you, even though it's miles away. You're in Sydney and I'm here on the Gold Coast. But it wasn't long ago that we were in a boot camp together, sweating bullets, doing stuff that was making us a little scared. But here we are, and I can't wait to introduce my friends and strangers listening here on the podcast to who you are. Thanks for coming on.
Awesome. Thank you very much, Tim, for having me on. This is an honor to be speaking with you and talking about anything and everything, and maybe we make a little change. Just before I start, I have a little story.
Sure.
Over the weekend, as I do, and we'll get into that a little bit later, probably. I was at a trail running event, huge event. It was like a camp in the middle of the forest outside Port Macquarie. The race was called the Elephant Trail Race. There's several races going on. They circumnavigate the same mountain. Every race is kind of going down the same track and trail, but some are longer, some are not as long. And then kind of on Sunday, when things kind of finished off, I met a couple that was packing up in this little tent village. And she comes up to me, she says, I've watched you all weekend, and because I was crewing for my friend. And she said, so inspired. She wants to know more about how I do things and what I do. And she texted me on Instagram. She connected with my running coaching business and stuff on Instagram. And she sent me a text on Monday and she said, thank you for your inspiration. I put my running shoes on again and I went for a little run just because you inspired me, And this is one weekend well spent if one person is inspired, and I didn't say much. I just said, look, it is what it is, and I was just being myself, which is nice sometimes too, and I enjoy that in Australia really. So sorry, I just thought that's a little thing, you said when you can just kind of, without wanting to, you're not forcing it, you just inspire someone, and to get something like that is awesome. That makes my day.
Man, well, that's such a great story and segue, I think, into our podcast together. I mean, there's a change you had in my life, and which I'll love to share as well in a moment. Could you though just introduce yourself? Like, you are many things. Obviously, an experienced engineer with great responsibility. Obviously, you're background is you're from Switzerland, but you also got this passion for healthy living, for doing that through running and through your own coaching. So how would you describe yourself now, and what's your mission? And give us the Mario version of who I get the privilege of talking with today.
Thank you, Tim. So I'll just go to some of the basics. I was born in South Africa to Swiss parents. And when I was 1.5 years old, we went to Switzerland for 7 years. And then we returned back to to South Africa in 1980 for another 8 years or so. So I went to school there. So I grew up in South Africa in the 80s. And it was just the start to, it was great. I mean, I wouldn't miss anything. And then also going back to Switzerland, who's this guy from South Africa? You go to Switzerland when you're 16 and people around you in a small village, they don't even know where South Africa is. And the funny thing is, because my parents, they wanted me to learn all the languages, but at home we always spoke our dialect, our Swiss German dialect. And I went to a German school as well, so I kept German going. So my parents were good from that point of view. Obviously, I grew up speaking English, Afrikaans, French, German, and at home we spoke Swiss German. Don't ask me to speak any of these languages anymore.
No
It's been too
Afrikaans
long.
or...
Oh, I can hear it and I can understand it, of course. But the big thing is, it's like you're always explaining and you're always trying to make a change, of course, with whatever you do and wherever you are. And then also because I loved being brought up in such a diverse environment. A great environment, I loved every minute of it. I just also chose to then say, I think I'm made to travel the world. So this is also why I became a mechanical engineer and then traveled the world for many years as a service engineer, installing machinery in the weirdest and funniest places. It's been good. So yeah, I think that made me a little bit from a perspective that I'm just open to anybody and anything. I don't really care where people are from, and I don't want to go too deep in what I think of certain places. Of course, I just love the world, and in my job now, in my day job as well, I'm global. I have a global role. I don't differentiate between anybody and anything. Everybody's equal. I love every continent. I've been to every continent. I've run on every continent apart from the Antarctica, and that's a little bit cold. So yeah, this is
I know some
basically,
people they could
yeah.
get you there and
I know
and
it's too
teach you,
cold.
says the man from Switzerland. I mean, look, it's been inspiring, obviously following you since we met in Sydney. And for those listening, we were in Sydney attending a boot camp for how to be better communicators through public speaking, and it was an incredibly intense 3 days of speaking. And obviously, we're there to kind of with a message that we want to share with the world, and we want to communicate that better. And I fell in love with your message. Can I share with you the impact you had? I might not do justice sharing maybe the message that you had, but here's the change that happened in my life. I'm someone that struggled a lot with, it's been later diagnosed in my life with attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, whatever that means. It's something on the spectrum of something, which I'm sure, find out we're all on. However, for me, the real implications is it's a very difficult world sometimes to live in for me. It's designed not for people like me. It's designed with systems and processes, and I found it that it was reflected in the way my report cards looked, with Tim always being distracted by my teachers, thinking I was a nice enough kid, so probably went undiagnosed early on. I wasn't the bad ADHD kid, I was just the chattering, likable, crazy Tim. And but more recently, I've had a journey of being on medication, and it's really messed with me, to be honest. I mean, this has not been an easy thing, and I've recently been kind of taking some time off of medication. And one of the biggest impacts that I've really had that's helped me with focus, with the work, is going for runs. It's activating it. Sometimes it's a lot easier to pop a pill, and it can be a lot harder to put on the running shoes and to go for a run. But the place that my body goes to, the hormones, the endocrine system, I guess, that gets activated, and I've really found it have a great impact on my own life. And I guess that's just one layer of maybe many ways in which people with your message, which I'd really love to start digging into now, with living a healthy, active lifestyle, a sustainable lifestyle, a life that enables us to do and be who we want to be in this crazy world that we're in, that's often trying to conform us and push us. And you've done that for me personally in that small interaction and impact that you've had on my life. And so let's talk about that. Let's talk about how people may be listening, what good in the world do we need to fight for in a world that is, where would you say is the problem, in this world? And how is Mario so passionate, and where is that passion lie for you, being someone with a solution that's seen it in their own life, transform their own life, and now wanting to transform in so many other people, whether they're athletes or everyday people like me?
I think, if I would have the answer, trust me,
You
we'd
yell it.
own half of the Gold Coast, my friend. It's a fantastic question. Thank you. I've not really ever thought about how to do things because I kind of just do things. I don't like to think, oh, maybe the day after tomorrow I'll have to do something. I mean, if you have a background of not being the healthiest guy, then you also know, at the end of the day, it starts with lying to yourself. If someone says, oh, smoking is okay if you only smoke 10 cigarettes a day, I mean, we all know that's a little bit BS. So winding the time back a little bit, I didn't mention in the beginning, I also lived in England because I met my wife in England and I moved to England and my daughter was born in England. And then through a job I got out here, we all moved to Australia. So that's actually how we all ended up here. We're also all Australians now, my daughter, my wife.
Yeah.
My stepson came out with us as well. He went back to England to get married. So he lives in England now and we've got some grandkids there as well. So which is great. I think everybody's a little bit different. If someone tells me this is not possible, then I'm like, oh, okay, yeah, that's your opinion. And then I kind of find a way. My story is really more, I needed to do something and I needed to find a way. What I didn't do well in the beginning is ask people for help because I'm a kind of very driven. So there's something I always see, there's motivation and then there's drive. Motivation gets you started, I think, but then the drive is what really gets you out of bed. Saying no to the donut shop or saying no to the cigarettes and, saying no to the third beer and say two is enough. And so whatever it is, it doesn't really matter. It's like we have to do something that we can drive towards. So I stick to being driven. And that's where I think the humans can really, yeah, be the best of the flower, out of the bulb, I think. I don't know if that's a great explanation because, like I said, in all honesty, I haven't really thought much about it. I just know how I am. If I go somewhere, I know I've got the drive to get there, on whatever journey that is.
Well, there was a moment I remember you shared with me and a few of us where you were in that store in, I forget where it was, and there was a moment that really was a pivotal point in your life. Do you mind sharing that story and sharing what you learned from that experience as you look back on it now? Do you mind sharing that with our audience?
Absolutely not. No, this is not a problem at all. Yeah, so I was a little bit of a big bloke. I was about 120 kilos roughly. There's a stage in life where you stop weighing yourself because you're worried that the hand of that thing actually goes to the end. That was what I was scared of. So yeah, we got an invitation. We lived in England, the northeast of England. We got an invitation to a wedding. One of my Swiss friends in Switzerland got married, and we were invited. I didn't have a suit, so we had to go and buy a suit. So we went into the local shop in it's actually a town called Morpeth, which is between Newcastle and Edinburgh. And we walk into the shop, and what shocked me is obviously I walked into the shop, and the lady there said, "Hold on, you're going in the wrong area." So I just went to the normal size, suits, and not realizing that maybe I had to go to a different. And they had like a bigger section at that time. It was only a small shop, they had a bigger section. So that for me was like a knife in my heart, to be honest. Someone telling me, "Excuse me, but you belong over there." Kind of. I mean, she was nice enough about it. I'm not saying she wasn't, but bloody hell, the way I took it on was like, oh wow. And what actually really triggered it is that my daughter was running around. She was only little, and she was always running around, and she ran towards the door of the shop, and that's when it all hit me, when I'm like, if that door would have been open and she would have just run out of the road, I would not have a chance with that body to run after her, like a little baby elephant. So, and this is when I looked to my wife and I said, this is it. She says, what do you mean? I says, oh, I'll tell you later. So we did that wedding and then that was it, for me. Coming back, I started my health journey. On my own. There's always people around who tell you, you should be doing this and that, which is fine. You take that on board. But luckily, I had the drive to just say, no, let's see where this goes, this journey. And as you grow into this journey, you become a little bit obsessed, of course, as anything we do. Someone who fishes a lot or goes golfing a lot, they talk a lot about what they do, fishing or golfing. So I obviously started reading magazines and books and watched, YouTube came about, the internet and so on. And you learn a lot. And because I was still a service engineer, what I actually did was quite fun. Because I was installing machines and people then had to operate these machines. So I had to train them. So you got really close with these people. And one of the guys right at the beginning of my journey, he was a bit of a runner, right? He looked like a runner, he was lean, and I'm like, oh. And he gave me some tips, which was good because he soon noticed that I came by car with my friend in the morning, he was also my friend, the electrician. But then I ran to the hotel. So this is how I started fitting it all in. So I quickly noticed, hold on, this, I don't have time, will not exist. I have to make.
You have to functionally.
Yeah, because you can't just go home on a Friday because I worked away usually a week or two, but I have to fit it in. So if I want to be a runner, I have to fit it in. So in the morning, I didn't always have time, although now I'm a morning runner or whatever you want to call it. But back then, so I already soon noticed, hold on, you've got the knack to get yourself organized. So my work colleague, he always took my bag with me and just threw them in front of my hotel room door. So when I ended up in the hotel, I had my backpack, and we just did that 3-4 times a week. And this is just how it started over years. And yeah, it was awesome. Just getting organized, making it sustainable. If you aim too high, you might not reach that, and then you might give up.
It reminds me of I used to work with somebody. In fact, he was my boss for about a decade in New York, and became one of my best friends. He was groomsman at my wedding. But we used to, still catch up on the phone, and he would be telling me about this this YouTube channel he wanted to start. He hadn't started because for so long now, he started, I saw him starting to run the New York Marathon. He was doing all these different things. And every time we would catch up in person, every year or so, he'd just look thinner and leaner and meaner. And he used to, this is what he used to do. And he wanted to coach people, have a YouTube channel about how you can work exercise into your life. So the time it took for him to boil the kettle in the morning, he'd be on the floor doing push-ups. And then when it stopped boiling, he'd get back up. And then he'd have all these different things functionally built in to his life. And he was, he's 10 years older than me. So he was 40 at the time when he was doing a lot of these things, or is in his 40s. And so it just reminded me too of what you're saying. It's sometimes, it doesn't have to be this formal regime that you do. And it does have to be a journey. You have to take yourself. And it does require that, I think, that moment of drive. I mean, everyone wants the good looking body, and we want everything, right? We want it all. But at some point, there's a moment like you shared, and for me, the frustration, I don't like the way I am when I'm on medication, or I don't like whatever it is that gets to the point where you have to do something. What I love though is that you've now, having done that, and for many, many years now, you're wanting to be that mentor, that guide to others. Probably just need someone to believe in them, right? Just need someone to say, you can do it. If I can, I promise you can. And we don't need all the fancy stuff, though there are some pretty powerful tools that you've learned along the way that can really be really impactful for people that might not feel like they have the time or might not feel like they're in the right place to do it. So what has that become? I mean, for you, that's become let me start a a coaching a business. You call it Healthetica, which I'd love for you to talk about where that name comes from. Really, what is behind this new venture that Mario is wanting to share the world with?
So yeah, the name is the name is actually comprised out of two things: health, of course, and Switzerland's Latin name is Confederatio Helveticum in Latin. So this is
I
why
did not know
when
that.
in Europe, every country has to have like the country sticker on the car, you know. Many people might notice that, you know. You go to England, they have GB, and in Germany they have a D or
For the
D, and
license plate, right?
yeah, the license plate plus you put a sticker on the car. It's kind of something that's quite common. Over here, we obviously don't have to do this because, you know, you can't really
No other
to get
countries.
here with a
We have
foreign
our
car.
Victoria and
Yeah, that's all
Queensland
you have. Yeah, but we
states.
don't have an extra sticker. So CH is actually the sticker for Switzerland. And there's one country in the world that still calls us by that name, Helvetia, and that is the Greeks, because the Greeks are still kind of very historical. So the
They
only
are.
country that does not call us
They still live in
Switzerland
the
or Swiss,
past.
it's great, yeah. And they call themselves Hellas as well, where we
Yeah.
call them like Greece and Greca and whatever, you know, in all the different languages. So it's just a combination of health and Healthetica with a V. So I've just changed that to Healthetica coaching. Yeah, so this is the idea. And the practice is just it's comprised of three things at the moment. So obviously the run coaching part, where I have a very holistic way of coaching people. So I look at the human and the athlete first, all ages. I have runners that are 12 and 14 up to 70, my oldest runner. And my specialty will also go into more the ultra distance, the really longer stuff, although I coach from 800 meters to wherever. And then we have this keynote speaking, just mentoring, coaching, looking after teams, businesses. It doesn't really matter what it is, where we just go in and talk to people and understand what they're going through every day, especially customer care teams, of course. They get some nasty phone calls. I've been in customer care all my life in a way, because you're always there for the customer. And I don't think these people are trained on how to deal with things. And you've just hit the nail on the head earlier on, you know. You're on medication because maybe that's what someone said you had to be, you know. And there's a lot of people who are on antidepressants and they're not happy. They've got a lot of anxiety. They hate going to work. And this is where this idea came about, that, you know, you want to do something for your vitality and your sustainability. The better you think you look, or the healthier you think you are, the more confident you are in life. This is just a given. You know, the humans always go to the weak, and independent of how it's just the way we are wired, you know. It's so easy, you know, it starts at school with the weak guys, you know. He has a tough life, you know. Because the big guy will always go against the smaller guy, and nobody stands up to him and all these things. I mean, I don't want to go too deep into that, but that's just how we are wired. And then the third part is also a little bit of nutrition. So I'm also a personal trainer and a wellness coach and a fitness instructor and all these things. Above all, the run coaching, ultra running coaching. I've always also learned that nutrition is such an important part. I think weight loss and health happens in the kitchen rather than on the road running around. There's about 80%. But I'm no nutritionist, and I will never say I am. But I am studying at the moment endurance sports nutrition, where I'm then allowed to give a little bit more advice. So I can give advice to people what they need to eat before, after a run, during a run, and things like that as a personal trainer. So it's just all a bit of a holistic view of things. You will find a lot of marathon training coaches online, because that's been studied. We've been running marathons since the Olympics in Paris in 1904 or whatever it was. But everything else hasn't really been studied much. And all the studies are done on men and so on. Yeah, this is kind of what I'm looking at doing now, which is important to me. And hopefully within the next 2 or 3 years, this will grow quite nicely. And people, like you say, want me to be their mentor or their coach, which is great, you know.
Oh, mate, I can see it already happening, and it already is. And I think, you know, for someone that you self-confessed you grew up hating running.
Very much.
Yeah, I mean, let's just start there for a second, because it's become like, I live on the Gold Coast here, and it's very lifestyle. There's like, to be honest, I can go down to my local beach break and there's people with their influencer video things going on, and lots of running groups and lots of running. And I think there's something about just running, hitting the pavement. You don't need anything. You just need sneakers, right? It is just you and your thoughts, and obviously unless you're running with somebody in a group. But again, you don't need to have somebody else to do it. What have you found as being some of the greatest lessons you've learned that have turned it from something that you hate to something you do every day?
Right in the beginning, you said when you do running, you feel great afterwards. I think that's what every runner notices. I can tell you 99.9% of all runs that happen on Earth, the runner will have felt better after the run than before the run. Unless, obviously, they got hit by a car, of course. That's just a trauma accident, I'm not...
Or,
obviously not.
Or
But,
twisted their ankle or did something.
Yeah, correct, yeah. But basically, from a mental stability perspective, it's the best. I mean, I use running as meditation. I think the biggest learnings is everybody can do it, like you said. I ran my first few treadmill runs in that hotel room when I started running, when I worked in Liverpool for 4 years. The first few months I had my gardening sneakers on because that's all I had. And then I told myself, if I could run 4 miles on this treadmill without keeling over, I'm going to buy myself some running shoes. And I did that, the next Saturday I was at home. The biggest learning is, of course, you meet a lot of great people. You feel good. Everybody can do it. And I call everybody a runner. So as soon as you run with a purpose, you're a runner. It does not matter how fast you are, how slow you are. Of course, there's differences between people who only run on the pavement as opposed to people who run on trail and love the mountains and so on. But from a confidence perspective, if you go and run in the morning, Tim, and you go to the office or you go and do whatever you do, you've already done something. You've already ticked something off. You got out of bed, you've made your bed, you've had a coffee or whatever it is. You've ticked 5 or 6 things off. Running is just part of those things, and it becomes a lifestyle. Of course, for me, it's a little bit more than a lifestyle. I'm obviously obsessed with running, but
can I ask you something,
though?
Does it still difficult for you sometimes to put on those shoes, and do you still have the thing in your head that says, oh, maybe you don't need to go today? Is it get to a point where it's just so embedded as to what you do? But can it still be difficult?
This is a great question.
Be honest.
I'm only speaking for myself.
Yeah.
Tim, okay.
It's fine.
Ask me this question. I love having a goal, a huge goal of a race at the end of whatever it is in 6, 9 months, 12 months. That alone gets me out of bed. Because I know the goal is so high, the objective is so high, the task is so high, the benchmark is so high. If I have one run that I missed and I'm standing at the start line, I'm thinking, oh, I didn't do that workout, I didn't run on that hill, and I skipped that run. I mean, runs always, with traveling and stuff, there is days where you can't do it. But I would say 9 out of 10 times, and I have to be honest, because I love the training aspect, it's fantastic. Yeah, there's the odd morning when I'm like, oh, is it really, especially when I travel. When I'm at home, it's not too bad. But when I travel for work, it's harder because you've got meetings all day and you're traveling all day and the days are already long. And then to squeeze it in, sometimes I need to really draw on that extra bit of motivation and drive that I have within myself, luckily. But yeah, but I can only speak for myself. I love the training part. For me, the race is just a cherry on the cake. The journey to a race for me is great. I've done some races, the same ones, but most of the time I have done many races just once because they're on that bucket list and I want to tick them off.
And there's some pretty incredible achievements. I mean, we're talking like hundreds of kilometers that you've run, and not just on a straight flat terrain. And so when you get to the point where you're covering, as they say, the ultra distances, there's a next level of mental challenge, of preparation, of support and help that is required. That being said, though, and I think for a lot of listeners, right, they don't necessarily have the goal of becoming the next ultra marathon runner, but for them, they've been told. I think of my own wife, she's not really interested in sports. She doesn't really want to be a runner. But I remember you said something. Well, you can still just move and walk and get out, and that's what I think I love about your approach, Mario, is that this is so important. Like, I don't want to over dramatize this, but when we're talking about our self view of ourselves, when we talk about, I guess, this world that is taking us away from nature, is taking us away from a healthy lifestyle, an active lifestyle. I mean, we as humans, think we were like, in our prehistoric days, right? We were moving 20, 30 kilometers a day. We are built to be moving species. And we have so much that is fighting and pushing us against that. And I think getting people moving, getting people then to feel the effects of when your body's moving, when you're filling it with good things, and that can change your life. And it's changed your life, and I think it's something that needs to be simple. And I say simple, not easy, because just because it's simple doesn't mean it's easy. It's hard. It's difficult to have to make these decisions, not even because of our own motivation, but because the constant push and drive and current of society, right? To go against the grain and to do these things. And what would you say to somebody out there that's like, yeah, but you don't know me, you don't know my ability, or whatever it might be? What would you say to someone listening out there to encourage them, to help them along their way?
You can have two different people saying exactly the same thing, but you don't know me. Now, one will say that in a positive manner, saying, but I'm asking you for help, but you don't know me. Please get to know me and we can go on this journey together, which is obviously my preferred way. And then there's the other person who says exactly the same thing, means it, and has already given up because that's the excuse they have. That's how I see people, right? Because I always meet my athletes. I call them all athletes, right? They're not just runners, they're athletes, but they're humans first.
I love that.
I always have a long-term approach. So if someone comes to me and says, I want to run a marathon in 3 months, can you write me a plan? Very, very, very rarely do I do that, because I'm responsible for that running plan. And if I don't know how much they've already got, running puts quite a bit on your body, But if you can walk, then we do that. I'm on a run-walking program at the moment because I'm coming back from a stress fracture, which is a bit of a freak incident with me. I've got a sacrum stress fracture, which is very rare, but I'm honest about it. I had it twice. This is why we had a few tests done. So I'm just kind of working with all the people in my network. But the approach to someone who says, look, you don't know me, then I would say, okay, let me get to know you. If you allow me to get to know you, then I'll guarantee you we'll do something out of it. People underestimate how good walking is for you. We're the only specimen on Earth that can run for long distances. Fact. There's no animal that can do what we do on land, okay? Because they're not built that way. Because we can sweat, other animals cannot. Fish is
Fascinating.
different, and birds. So I'm talking about land animals. Yeah, so mammals, so to say. We're the only mammal on Earth that can run long distances. And that's also how we hunted when you said
Hmm.
the guy in the cave.
Yeah.
We hunted in packs. They did relays. So they ran maybe a marathon a day, like you mentioned, or 30 Ks a day. And then in the end, they tired the animal. The animal got tired, and that's how they got got to eat meat. They still ate. Or they were foraging more than they were hunting a lot. That doesn't mean they killed. A hunter doesn't mean he achieves his goal, right? He's just
Yeah.
hunting. Okay, that's also
Sure.
something we always have to be mindful of when they said, oh, we're hunters, not gatherers. I says, we were more gatherers than hunters because we were hunting a lot, but while we were hunting, we were hungry, so we had to eat along the way until we actually caught an animal. That's another movement that I don't want to go into the details, what do we eat and what shouldn't we eat and so on,
Sure.
because that's not my
Sure.
specialty. But look, basically in short, I look at the person and say, look, I can help you. It's an easy mathematical equation, and as an engineer, I always try and explain that as well, especially to my youngsters who are quite smart and intelligent to go to school and they've got maths and algebra. How many steps do you think you take an hour when you walk, and how many steps do you think you take an hour when you run? Obviously, when you walk, you make more steps because your stride length is a lot shorter. So it's simple. If you only walk for weight loss or fitness, that is very, very effective because you can do that without eating anything. Your energy just after waking up is more than good enough. That means you burn a little bit of fat, maybe it wakes yourself up. It's very simple. So and
And
every
if you're getting
time,
outside, right, you're probably getting
yeah,
some vitamin D. You might even
absolutely.
be saying hello and smiling to a few people along the
How good is
way.
that?
Yeah, I
Say good
mean, all
morning to
those
your neighbor.
inadvertent kind of benefits, right?
Exactly. It's so underrated. Walking is the most underrated exercise in the world. I am such a big fan of walking. I mean, in a long event, you do walk and you do hike, so I have high respect. So I have to practice walking because walking is not that easy. So if people say, oh, but I can only walk, I'm not a runner, I says, that's not, if you walk, you walk. You're moving. You're moving more than a lot of other people. So it's simple, every time you land, even if it's walking, you still push off your own body weight by yourself each time. Yeah, maybe the loading is different. It's not as high as when you run. But if you
Spoken like an
count
engineer.
yeah, but sometimes people understand that way, It's
No,
like
no, I love it. I
you
love
can
it.
write it down. It's like, okay, I do 15,000 steps and I push off twice my body weight when I walk and 4 times the body weight when I land or when I push off when I run. In the end, you've moved tons. Thousands of kilos in that hour. Who cares how you did it?
It's
I mean,
so
you don't
good.
have to go into detail of how
No,
this
I love
works.
that though.
It's
I
just
love that
you're
analogy.
still moving, and then, oh wow, look at me. Yeah, look at you go. 1 hour of walking. Hallelujah.
The fact that I'm still standing at my standing desk. Again, another thing, I did have this before we met, but it's also, you know, those are kinds of the things that I think I just so, as I mean, we caught up after our sessions and chatted and talked, and it's just one of the things I really so appreciate about about your approach. And I think if we want to create a world that's better for our kids, right, and for our grandkids, it's a world that kind of gets back to being human again, right? We see it with the onslaught of technology, and technology is great, right? We all know that. I don't want to get into the whole divert into another discussion, but I think it's fair to say that bringing us back to being more human, connected socially with ourselves and with one another, and I think you're going on that journey with someone like you is an absolute joy because it's someone who's done the work, who does the work still, and I think your outlook on life, your experience, the world, your openness, and I want to kind of go back to that as we kind of wrap things up a little bit. Obviously you've had quite an openness to other cultures and ways of life, and we look at how kind of fragmented our world is getting and how polarizing things sometimes can become, especially if we watch a bit too much news. But, for you as a person, I really love the open-heartedness you have. People automatically, I felt it, feel very comfortable around you, which is a gift, to have, to make people feel. And as you think about the world, I remember you said something like, even I don't feel like I belong sometimes. Even I don't feel like I kind of fit in. And, I think that's part of just being human too, that the quote by Maya Angelou, I've probably said it a million times on this podcast, that says, you're only free when you realize you belong no place. You belong every place. You belong no place at all. And there's a juxtaposition, right? There's this place of, how do I fit in a place I know I already belong? It just doesn't recognize that yet. How, for you, for someone who lives that, providing that place of belonging for others, how do you wrestle with that personally? What does that mean to you? And in this world that's wanting to tear itself apart, what are your hopes? What would you want to share? What are some of the things on your mind as kind of reflect that back to you, that comment? I remember I don't know if you said it or wrote it at some point. I think maybe
I've been a foreigner
chats.
all my life. I think that's where we're getting back to. We were writing that, so because I still am. If you hold three nationalities, you didn't grow up and lived in one country for a long duration of time. You're from a different country. You speak a different language. Your dialect might not be perfect, but I mean the best place on earth, and I have to be honest about this, is definitely Australia from that point of view. People get accepted here for the way they are, or not accepted for the way they are, which is then their fault. I mean, I look people in the eye after traveling the world and working in every country. And when you work in many countries, you really work with the people from the country. So you're not always at general manager, CEO level, who can even be from a different country. But it's this blue-collar approach. I've found in countries, and I'm not going to name any countries because this is not what we do here, but where I was a little bit worried how I'm going to be treated. And I tell you what, it's been the best. The presents I was given came more from the heart than anywhere else. I've experienced some real deep kind of stuff where I'm like, wow, that came from that person. Yeah, I look people in the eye, and that's how I see it. And when their eyes, I mean, I've met thousands of people. I've been wrong maybe 5% of the time, but I've also been wrong when it's come out as a positive. So I thought this might not be right, but then it came right. And then some, you always get disappointed with some people, but just look people in the eye and talk to people. And I think the most important thing for me as someone who talks a lot is realize we have two ears and only one mouth. So sometimes it's just good to ask a question and then just listen to these people. There's always a story behind everybody. Someone you meet angry on the road, he's just had something going on. I mean, we discussed about this, this strangers, embrace the strangers, because without strangers, we're not going to get anywhere. And you had your story from a person, again, I'm not going deep into it, but someone that you would have expected something completely different. And then he realized what your journey was. And we all have a story, we all have a reason. And we also have to learn to respond as opposed to react. So we react very quickly. And then we also have to take on responsibility if someone says something. That's just maybe how they speak. I mean, this is an issue we have with social media. If I write something somewhere, people might, even they don't know me, and they've not listened to this podcast or whatever it is, they might think, what does he mean by it? Is he attacking me? We always feel like someone's throwing something at us, as opposed to thinking, hold on, we need to be responsible for how we respond to anything that happens around us. That is our responsibility, no one else's. You cannot blame the guy next to you who's been angry at you or whatever. It's your responsibility to respond the right way and respect that person. and just deal with it. This is our biggest problem. I'm not a specialist psychologist or anything like that, but after being on Earth over 50 years now, I've realized, hold on, we are responsible for what we do and how we respond, and we shouldn't react all the time.
Well, for someone who in their profession has led one of the largest sites in Europe, and obviously been sent around here to Australia and around the world in your work and leading teams and leading people, I think that there's something to be said for that. And I think that for anybody out there listening and thinking, wow, I wonder if there's something to learn from my organization to bring that energy, I think self-confidence, that support. I think just what you shared there is such a core part of doing that, treating people with respect, giving people the benefit, assuming the best in people, allowing them to prove themselves to you that they will rise to the challenge when we put that confidence and trust in them. And I know for anyone out there that's maybe feeling like, well, I don't know where to start with their health journey, and I would definitely encourage you all to reach out to Mario and to check out Healthetica, the website. Maybe you could share a bit about where they can find you. You've obviously released a great new website, which I was really impressed by, because I'd love for people, if they do get a chance to touch base with you and journey with you. I know you're not into doing the hard sell, so I'll do it for you. But if anyone does want to find out and get to know you, please let them know where you can be found, how to get in touch.
Thank you very much. Yeah, it's the website has just launched over the last weekend, so I'm a little bit excited. We're just setting everything up now. We have email addresses and so on. So the easiest way to find us is on healthetica.com.
Yeah.
If we don't answer emails just yet, it's not 100% set up yet, but the website's out there. We're on Instagram, Healthetica Coaching. So it's Healthetica Coaching all the way. You will find us on
we'll make
socials.
Sure
there's no Facebook
in the show
page.
Notes.
There's a LinkedIn as well.
Okay.
Perfect. That would be lovely. Yeah. Thank you very much. Yeah. So texts and stuff. There's a phone number on there. We usually respond quite quickly, but I think by the end of July, beginning of August, everything will be set up, and then we can start rolling. And I've got my wife on board as well, which is great. She's got some good ideas as well. So it's good. It's good. We're excited. We're really excited to finally get out of that bubble and say, you know what? Let's give this
a crack.
Let's give this a crack. I mean, look, I think people, you're talking about what inspired you. Let's be honest. You inspired me as well a hell of a lot, because what you've just done recently takes more than just guts, and I respect that highly, and I'm looking at you as well, what you're doing. So it's, you're doing the good. You're doing the good. You're leading from the front, as well as many other people who should be doing that, but they should be watching what you're doing as well, So hats off to you.
Thanks, man. Well, it's been so much fun just chatting some more, Mario, and learning more a bit about who you are and sharing you with my audience, my friends. Hey, is there anything else you want to share? Anything else that you want to say before we sign off and call it a wrap?
Like we said, walk more, respond more, react less. And where there's a hill, there's a way.
I love it. Yes. Alrighty. Well, with that said, my friend, take care. And that's a wrap for this episode of the Just Podcast. Thanks for tuning in. If you found it valuable, why not share it or leave a review and drop a comment on Spotify or YouTube? Every little bit helps get these conversations out there. And you can always reach out to me at timothybuxton.com. I'd love to hear from you. And I'll see you next time for another courageous conversation.